What a beautiful house. My mom is going to love it. We're moving in, my daughter-in-law said, like it was already a done deal. I didn't argue. I didn't even react. I just listened, while she started dividing up every room in my own house. When she finished, I set my coffee cup down and said one single word. And suddenly, the whole room went dead silent. What a beautiful house. My mom is going to love it. We're moving in next month. Brenda said it so casually, like she was just chatting about the weather. She ran her perfectly manicured fingers over the solid oak table my husband had built with his own hands 30 years ago. I sat at the head of the table, coffee cup in hand, just watching her. I'm Renata, 67, a widow, and for 4 decades the undisputed queen of this house in a quiet suburb outside Chicago. I'm not one for big speeches, but I notice everything. I saw how my son Trevor kept his eyes glued to his slice of Black Forest cake, studying it like it held the answers to the universe. He didn't say a word. Brenda, on the other hand, was beaming. She'd already pulled a shiny metal measuring tape out of her purse. The guest room upstairs gets the best morning light. She went on smiling at her mom Lorraine, who'd come along today for the tour. And the basement's basically a full apartment. Trevor and I could set up our home office down there once we're all settled. That's when the air in the room got thick. They weren't talking to me. They were talking about me, like I was just another piece of furniture they could rearrange. Brenda had already assigned bedrooms before the coffee even had a chance to get cold. Lorraine was nodding eagerly, inspecting the window frames like she owned the place. I set my cup down. The porcelain clinked softly against the saucer. No shaking, just a clean period at the end of a sentence. I looked Brenda straight in the eyes. Her smile was calculated, a mix of condescension and the assumption that the old lady would cave eventually just to keep the family peace. No, I said. Just that one word. It wasn't loud, but it sliced right through Brenda's chatter like a hot knife through butter. The whole table froze. Trevor finally looked up, shock and fear flickering in his eyes. Brenda blinked, like maybe she hadn't heard me right. She had no idea this was only the beginning. "Excuse me, Renata," Brenda asked after a long, awkward minute of silence. She let out a short, fake little laugh meant to cover her irritation. "You must have misunderstood. This place is way too much work for you to handle alone. We just want to help." I leaned back in my chair. "I understood you perfectly, Brenda. You just decided how the rooms in my house are going to be assigned. And my answer is no. Lorraine isn't moving in here, and neither are you." Trevor cleared his throat nervously. "Mom, come on. Brenda means well. The house is huge, and those stairs aren't getting any easier for you." It was the same old song, fake concern masking pure convenience. They wanted to ditch the rent on their city apartment and dump Lorraine's care onto me. "I'm in good shape, Trevor. I swim every morning and take care of the garden myself," I replied calmly. I glanced at Lorraine, who was suddenly very interested in the hallway wallpaper. "Guests are always welcome, but I choose who lives here. And right now, I'm choosing the peace and quiet you seem so scared of over this kind of so-called company." Brenda's face hardened. The mask of the thoughtful daughter-in-law slipped a little. "We've already broken the lease on Mom's place in Phoenix," she hissed. "She's arriving in 2 weeks. Where's she supposed to go?" That was her big mistake. She thought she could bulldoze me with a done deal. I stood up and started clearing the dessert plates, moving with steady, deliberate hands. "There are some lovely senior communities nearby," I said as I loaded the dishwasher. "I'd be happy to print you a list, but nobody's measuring anything in this house today." Brenda gripped her purse so tight her knuckles turned white. She could feel her plan slamming into a solid brick wall, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. The following week, Brenda switched tactics. Instead of demanding, she started doing. On Tuesday, she showed up at the door with 2 big boxes. "Just some of Mom's things that arrived by mail," she said, pushing past me into the hallway. "They can stay in the basement for a few days until we sort everything out." I watched her plop the boxes right next to the coat rack. She didn't wait for permission. She was already treating my house like her personal storage unit. Trevor wasn't with her. He was conveniently at work dodging the whole mess as usual. Brenda gave me a triumphant little smile as she left, probably figuring that once she got 1 foot in the door, the rest would follow. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner. I'm not the type to yell or make scenes. I'm the type who keeps order. I went to the garage, grabbed the hand truck, and wheeled those heavy boxes full of dishes and clothes straight back out to the front porch under the little overhang so they wouldn't get wet if it rained. Then I sent Trevor a short text. "Brenda left some boxes here. They're outside. Please pick them up by tonight. It's supposed to rain." No accusations, no long explanations. Just a clear statement about whose stuff was whose. 2 hours later, Trevor called, sounding stressed. "Mom, you can't do that. That's rude to Lorraine." "Trevor," I said evenly. "What's rude is using my house as storage without asking." I said no. That goes for people and boxes. That evening, Trevor showed up alone. He wouldn't even look at me as he silently loaded the boxes into his car. He looked exhausted, like a faded version of the boy I'd raised. I didn't offer him coffee. If you're only showing up to push someone else's agenda, you're not a guest. He had no clue I'd already planned my next move. Thursday morning, I heard the familiar scrape of a key in the front door lock. But it was only 10 o'clock and my cleaning service didn't come until Fridays. I walked into the hallway and saw Brenda pushing the door open wide, 2 bags slung over her shoulder. "I figured I'd help you clear some stuff out of the basement," she said, without even looking at me, heading straight for the stairs. "We need space down there for Mom's sewing machine." She acted like our Sunday conversation had never happened. It was a deliberate push, testing how far she could go. I grabbed her arm, not hard, but firm enough to stop her. "Brenda, give me the key." She laughed nervously. "What? Why, Trevor gave it to me for emergencies, in case something happens to you." "This isn't an emergency," I said. "This is trespassing. Give me the key, now." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You're so selfish, Renata. You're sitting here on your throne while your family struggles. Lorraine has nobody." She slammed the key on the side table and stormed out. I heard her rev the engine and peel away. I didn't waste time calling Trevor to complain. I grabbed the phone book and called a local locksmith. An hour later, the front door lock was replaced. The guy handed me 3 new keys, one for me, one as a spare in my safe, and the third I held on to for now. After that, I went to the bank. For years since Trevor's college days, I'd been sending a nice monthly amount to help with the grandkids, enough for fun trips, activities, and breathing room. I didn't cut it off completely, but I changed where it went. Now, it went straight into a savings account in Caleb and Sophie's names, with only me having access until they turned 18. If Brenda thought my house and my money were her personal retirement plan, she'd miscalculated badly. On the 1st of the next month, my phone rang right around noon. This time, it wasn't Trevor. It was Brenda, and her voice had lost all its calm superiority. It was shrill. "Renata, what happened to the money for the kids? It didn't hit our account. We already signed them up for summer camp." I was sitting in my sunroom watching chickadees at the feeder. "The money's safe, Brenda," I said calmly. "It's in a savings account for Caleb and Sophie. I want to make sure it goes straight toward their future when they're older. But we need it now," she practically yelled. "You have no idea how expensive everything's gotten." "I know exactly how expensive it is," I answered. That's why it's important for Lorraine to budget her own retirement instead of counting on free rent in my house. If you're having money troubles, maybe take a look at your own spending instead of trying to claim what's mine. There was a long silence on the other end. I could almost hear Brenda scrambling for a new angle. She'd always assumed my money and my house were one and the same, a resource she was entitled to. Now she was realizing I had a tight grip on both. "You can't do this," she said finally, quieter but venomous. "We're your family. Family respects boundaries, Brenda. You only respect your own wishes. As long as you treat my house like it's yours, I'll keep my finances protected from your reach." I hung up. I didn't feel bad. I felt lighter. This house used to be full of laughter when my husband was alive. He would have wanted me to protect it. I went to the kitchen and made myself a fresh pot of coffee. Black, as always. I knew they'd send Trevor next. He was their last card. But Trevor didn't know me as well as he thought he did anymore. It was Saturday evening when Trevor showed up unannounced. He tried his old key in the door. Through the window, I watched him frown at the new lock cylinder, twisting and turning the key until he finally rang the bell. He looked lost, like a little boy who'd forgotten the way home. I opened the door, but kept him standing in the hallway. "The key doesn't work anymore," he said flatly. "I changed the locks after Brenda let herself in without an invitation," I explained. "Come in, Trevor, but we're talking in the kitchen." We sat across from each other just like we used to when he'd get in trouble at school. Except now he was 40 with gray hairs at his temples. Mom Brenda's at the end of her rope. Lorraine's sitting on her suitcases, and we promised she'd have a place here. "Why are you being so hard about this?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Did you promise that Trevor? Or did Brenda promise? And you just nodded because it was easier than saying no." He looked away. That was my answer. "You're my son, and I love you," I continued. "But this house is my life. Your dad passed away here. My memories are on every wall. If Lorraine moves in, it stops being my home and turns into a shared house where I'm the unpaid housekeeper." "She'd help," he protested, but it sounded half-hearted. "She'd take over Trevor, just like Brenda's trying to take over my bank account. I moved the grandkids' money so it wouldn't get swallowed up in moving costs. That's my right." Trevor let out a heavy sigh. "Brenda says, if you don't back down, we'll visit less. She doesn't want the kids around this kind of negative energy." "Are you seriously threatening me with my own grandkids, Trevor?" My voice went ice cold. "Think carefully about what you say next, because if you cut contact, it won't change my mind about the house. It'll just mean you lose an old woman who's always had your back." He swallowed hard. He knew I wasn't bluffing. After that talk with Trevor, there was radio silence for 2 weeks. It was an odd time. The quiet I usually cherished felt heavier than usual, but I held my ground. I didn't change my routine. I tended my roses, played bridge with my friend Helen, and read in my husband's old armchair at night. One afternoon, I spotted a car in the driveway. It was Lorraine. She sat there alone, just staring at the house. I didn't go out. I watched from behind the curtain. After 10 minutes, she got out, walked to the fence, and ran her hand along the wood. She didn't look like a conqueror. She looked like a woman realizing her plan was falling apart. I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. "Hello, Lorraine." She jumped. "Oh, Renata, I just wanted to see if you were home. Brenda said you weren't feeling well." "I'm doing great," I said calmly. "Would you like to come in for some tea?" She hesitated, then nodded. We sat in the kitchen. No cake this time, just tea. "Brenda told me you were clearing the house for me," Lorraine said softly, staring at her hands. "Then Brenda lied." I replied without any bitterness. "I'm never clearing this house. and I'm not taking in roommates. I told her that from the start. Lorraine exhaled heavily. She said you'd asked for it so you wouldn't be so lonely. I gave up my apartment, Renata. I sold almost everything. I'm sorry to hear that. But that was Brenda's decision, not mine. You should start looking for a new place right away. There's a nice senior living community near the park with openings. In that moment, Lorraine realized Brenda had used her as a pawn. Brenda wasn't trying to help her mom. She was trying to get control of my house and my inheritance. Lorraine was just the excuse. She's my daughter, Lorraine said weakly. And Trevor's my son, I replied. But we're the mothers. We get to decide how we want to live, not them. When Lorraine left, she looked older, but also more determined. She'd figured out she wouldn't find shelter here, but maybe she'd found an ally in the truth. News of Lorraine's visit must have sent Brenda into a rage. The next Sunday, our usual family day, they all showed up unannounced. Trevor, Brenda, the kids, and Lorraine. Brenda was clutching a stack of papers. "We need to talk, Renata," she said, trying to push past me. I stayed planted in the doorway. "Not today, Brenda. Today's Sunday. If you're coming as guests, you're welcome. If you're here to talk real estate, you need to leave. This is a draft for a living trust," she said, waving the papers. Trevor had it reviewed. It's way better for taxes if the house gets transferred to him now. You'd keep lifetime rights to the basement. I almost laughed. The sheer nerve was almost impressive. The basement. In the house I paid off with my husband while we pinched pennies on the heating bill. I looked at Trevor. "Did you really have this checked out?" Trevor stared at the floor. It would. It would give everyone security, Mom. Security for who? I asked. "I've already got everything in order. My will is with the lawyer. The house is mine until I die. After that, it's yours, Trevor. But only after. And if you try to shove me into the basement now, I'll change the will tomorrow and leave the house to a foundation for widowed women." That landed. Brenda went pale. Caleb and Sophie looked back and forth, confused by the tension, even if they didn't fully get it. "Go home," I said quietly. "Take your papers with you, and don't come back until you've learned what respect means." Brenda started to launch into a rant, but Lorraine grabbed her arm. "Come on, Brenda. That's enough." It was the first time Lorraine had pushed back against her daughter. They led her away like she was a prisoner of her own ambition. I closed the door and locked it. My hands shook just a little for the first time. But I felt proud. I defended my space. The next few months were peaceful. Almost too peaceful. No calls, no visits. I spent Sophie's birthday alone. I mailed her a package with a letter and the savings book that now held a solid amount for her future. I didn't know if Brenda would pass it on, but I'd told the bank to let me know if it was ever withdrawn. One November evening, there was a knock at the door. It was Trevor. Alone. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped. I let him in. This time, we went straight to the living room. "Brenda and I split up," he said simply. He sat on the couch and buried his face in his hands. "Lorraine moved into that senior place you mentioned. Brenda lost it. She blamed everyone but herself. She wanted me to sue you, Mom, for support or early inheritance." I put a hand on his shoulder. "And what did you say?" "I told her I wasn't selling out my own mother for a house that isn't even mine yet." That's when she packed her bags. It wasn't a victory lap for me. It was sad. A family had broken because greed won out over love. But Trevor looked more like himself than he had in years. The weight of constantly trying to meet Brenda's expectations had finally lifted. "You can stay in the guest room for a few nights," I said, "until you figure things out." He looked at me gratefully. Just for a few days, Mom. I don't want to. I don't want to be one of those people who just takes over. I know, Trevor. I know. That night, I slept deeply. The house no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like home again. I'd held my boundaries, and in the end, the truth had won. Not with lawyers or shouting matches, but with the simple power of an honest no. Brenda had forgotten the house was mine. But more importantly, she'd forgotten you can't force love by measuring walls. A year later, it's a sunny fall day outside Chicago. The leaves on the old oak in the backyard are glowing gold and red. I'm sitting on the bench my husband and I placed there watching Caleb and Sophie play in the piles of leaves. Trevor's in the kitchen cooking. He has a small apartment in the city now, but he comes by every other weekend with the kids. We have a new rule. We talk about everything straight and honest. No hints, no hidden agendas. Brenda still sees the kids regularly, but she doesn't step foot on my property anymore. That's the price she pays. She sends short, cool texts about pickup times, and that's fine. Lorraine comes by for coffee now and then. We're not best friends, but we share a quiet understanding about getting older and the mistakes our kids make. I kept my house. I kept my dignity. And I showed my son that real strength isn't about pushing others around, it's about refusing to let yourself be pushed around. Yesterday, Sophie asked me, "Grandma, why do you have so many locks on the doors?" I smiled and brushed her hair back. "So only the people who are really invited get to come in, sweetheart. I'm Renata. I'm 68 now. I still drink my coffee black. I still sleep on the left side of the bed. That's felt a little too big since my husband passed. But every morning when I get up and walk through my house, I know this. Every square foot is mine. Every wall, every photo, every beam of sunlight through the windows, I clean myself. A well-timed no isn't hostility. It's self-respect. My house is more than bricks and mortar. It's my promise to myself that I'll never become invisible just because I've gotten older. I glance up at the window. The house stands solid, just like me. And that's the best feeling in the world. The loudest voice doesn't always win control. Sometimes it's the one who knows exactly when to say no.